Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
HIV does not make people dangerous to know, so you can shake their hands and give them a hug. Heaven knows they need it.
Princess Diana feared for her life in her final weeks. She wrote a secret letter claiming someone planned to cause a car accident with brake failure. That summer, she was being followed everywhere. She made a final call to her sons just hours before the crash. The Mercedes that crashed wasn't even her regular car. Her usual driver wasn't behind the wheel. The security cameras in the tunnel mysteriously captured nothing that night. These forgotten details changed history forever. Diana was born into a world of privilege, but her life was anything but perfect. From the start, pressure surrounded her. Her parents had wanted a boy, and that disappointment cast a shadow over her early years. She grew up on the Sandringham estate, where royalty was just part of the landscape. But inside the walls of Park House, things weren't stable. Her parents fought often. When they finally divorced, Diana was just 6. The courtroom battles and emotional coldness left deep marks. She and her brother were passed back and forth between their parents, while their older sisters stayed away at school. It looked like a royal fairy tale from the outside, but to Diana, it felt cold and lonely. As she got older, Diana tried to find her place. School wasn't her strength. She was kind and sporty, but she struggled with academics and failed her exams. She dropped out at 16, a surprising move for someone from such a prestigious family. A short time at finishing school in Switzerland ended quickly. She didn't fit in and missed home. Her dream of being a ballerina also faded. She was simply too tall. But Diana kept searching. She cleaned houses, served at events, worked as a nanny, and eventually found joy helping at a kindergarten. In those moments with children, something clicked. She didn't care about status. She just wanted to care for others. That need to nurture had always been there. It started in childhood when she tried to protect her younger brother from the chaos around them. That deep empathy would later define her. Diana wasn't just warm. She felt everything. When her mother left, she remembered watching her cry through locked glass doors, unable to come inside. Those images stayed with her. They taught her how it feels to be shut out, to be unheard. So, she made it her mission to never make others feel that way. Volunteering with the elderly and disabled during school gave her purpose when academics didn't. People noticed it too. This quiet way she made others feel seen. It became her superpower. Then came Charles. Their first meeting was strange. She was just 16, and he was dating her older sister. Still, something about him stuck in her mind. She joked to friends that she'd marry him one day, and unbelievably, she did. But the match wasn't built on love. When they reconnected years later, Diana comforted Charles after a personal loss. He was touched, even clingy. From there, things moved fast. Too fast. They barely knew each other, mostly speaking on the phone. Yet a proposal came. Diana was young and swept up in it all. The world saw a fairy tale. She saw confusion. Their 1981 wedding was watched by hundreds of millions. But days before, Diana found a bracelet Charles had given to Camilla Parker Bowles. She was heartbroken and wanted to back out. Her sisters said it was too late. Charles, meanwhile, was also unsure. He admitted he didn't know what love really meant. Even in their official engagement interview, his cold answer to whether they were in love, whatever love means, revealed the cracks already forming. Still, Diana pushed on. Overnight, she became a global icon. At first, her style was simple and traditional, but as she grew bolder, so did her fashion. She transformed in front of the world. When Charles publicly admitted to cheating in 1994, Diana responded not with tears, but with a stunning black dress that made headlines everywhere. It was her way of reclaiming power. Fashion became a message, and she controlled that message with precision. But behind the glamour, the marriage was unraveling. The age gap, the different personalities, and Camilla's constant presence made it impossible. Charles had resumed his affair with Camilla by the mid-80s. Diana knew. She also started her own affairs. The emotional weight was crushing. She famously said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." The public loved her, but behind palace doors, she was isolated. That isolation hit hardest after Prince William was born. Diana suffered postnatal depression, but had no support. Even the birth had been scheduled around Charles's polo match. She returned home exhausted and emotionally broken. She cried alone, waited for Charles to come back, but he rarely noticed her pain. At William's christening, she felt invisible in family photos. Everyone posed around the baby while she stood on the side, forgotten. She was surrounded by wealth and royalty, but the loneliness was unbearable. Moreover, one cruel remark changed everything. When Prince Charles glanced at Diana and joked, "A bit chubby here, aren't we?" She laughed on the outside, but inside, something cracked. That moment marked the beginning of a secret battle. Behind palace walls and royal smiles, Diana was hurting. She began sneaking into the kitchens late at night, stuffing herself with food, and then rushing to purge before anyone noticed. To the world, she was the glamorous Princess of Wales. But in private, she was drowning in bulimia, loneliness, and shame. No one knew what she was going through, not at first. The palaces were cold, not just in temperature, but in spirit. Diana had walked into a world that looked like a fairy tale, but felt like a cage. She was young, desperate for love, and quickly realized she wasn't going to get it. Charles was distant. Camilla was always in the background. The rest of the royal family didn't understand her and didn't try. When she showed signs of emotional pain, they called her unstable. When she cried for help, they looked away. She once said the worst disease was feeling unloved, and she lived with that every single day. The cracks deepened until she broke. One day, in front of the world, she collapsed. It happened in Vancouver in 1986, after weeks of fasting and exercise. But even then, the palace acted like it was a personal weakness, not a cry for help. Diana didn't speak out, not at first. She kept her silence, held her mask in place, and went on pretending. But inside, she was building something, a plan to finally tell the truth. That truth exploded in 1992. A book hit the shelves called Diana, Her True Story. It shocked the public. The world read about her bulimia, her depression, her suicide attempts. No one could believe it. But the most explosive detail was still a secret. Diana had helped write it. Through a hidden network of cassette tapes and trusted friends, she fed her story to the author, Andrew Morton. The palace denied everything. Diana denied everything. But behind closed doors, she had poured her heart out. She knew it would cause an earthquake, and she was ready for it. The backlash from the royal family was harsh. They saw her as a liability, not a person. But the public felt something else. They felt her pain. For the first time, someone in power was saying, "I'm not okay." And people listened. Her honesty made others feel less alone. It gave mental health a new voice, one that wasn't clinical or distant, but raw and real. She described bulimia as a way to feel held, even if it was only for a moment. Her words cut deep because they were true. Diana's openness changed everything. At a time when mental illness was hidden behind closed doors, she brought it into the light. She didn't use medical jargon or pretend to be perfect. She just told the truth, and that was enough. The public loved her even more. Then there was her humanitarian work. On April 19, 1987, Princess Diana made history at London's Middlesex Hospital when she opened the UK's first dedicated AIDS unit. She walked into the hospital and shook hands with a man dying of AIDS. Cameras captured the moment. The headlines buzzed, but Diana didn't flinch. At a time when many thought AIDS could spread through touch, she crushed that lie with a single gesture. And she didn't stop there. 2 years later, in Harlem, she cradled a 7-year-old boy with AIDS and gently asked, "Are you heavy?" before pulling him close. 4 years after her first hospital visit, she returned, this time with Barbara Bush. When a patient broke down crying, Diana didn't freeze or walk away. She hugged him tight. Her message was clear. Fear doesn't help people. Compassion does. That same courage took her to Angola in 1997. She walked slowly, carefully, through a live minefield, wearing body armor and a visor, but showing no fear. The land was littered with explosives left behind from decades of war. Her goal wasn't just to pose for photos. She was standing with victims, many of them children who had lost limbs to these silent killers. Some British politicians slammed her for getting involved. They called her a loose cannon, but she didn't care. She told the Red Cross that if her visit helped even a little, it was worth it. Just weeks before her death, she visited landmine survivors in Bosnia, still pushing forward. That same year, the Ottawa Treaty banning landmines was signed. Her influence had done what politics alone could not. Years later, her son Harry returned to that minefield in Angola. It wasn't dangerous anymore. It had become a thriving neighborhood. Her walk had changed the map. But Diana's mission wasn't about big headlines. It was about forgotten people. She visited leprosy patients when the world looked away. In 1990, she ignored warnings from advisors and visited a hospital in Indonesia. A British tabloid screamed, "Don't do it, Di!" But she held the patient's hands anyway. In Nepal, she sat beside them, talked to them, touched them like they mattered, because they did. The doctors who saw her said their patients were stunned that a foreign princess even showed up. To Diana, titles didn't mean she should stay distant. They meant she had a responsibility. She took her sons to shelters for the homeless. She opened cancer units. She listened. She hugged. She cried. She didn't just wave from balconies. She stepped into the shadows where most royals never went. And when the pressure of public life overwhelmed her, she didn't walk away from the causes that mattered. After her divorce in 1996, she cut down her long list of charity roles to just 6. But she gave them more time, more focus. These were the causes she chose, not because she had to, but because she believed in them. And maybe that's why people loved her so much. She didn't just wear a crown, she wore her heart on her sleeve. When she crouched down to talk to children, she looked them in the eye. She didn't want to be queen of a country. She wanted to be queen of people's hearts. And she was. Prime Minister Tony Blair said it best after her death. Though her own life was often sadly touched by tragedy, she touched the lives of so many others with joy and comfort. It all started as a summer fling. At least, that's how it looked from the outside. Princess Diana had just ended her long and painful relationship with heart surgeon Hasnat Khan. She was trying to find some peace, maybe even a bit of joy. That's when Mohammed Al Fayed, The billionaire owner of Harrods invited her to spend time on his luxury yacht in the Mediterranean. His son, Dodi Fayed, was there too. The chemistry was fast and obvious. Suddenly, the most photographed woman in the world was caught in a whirlwind romance, and the press couldn't get enough. Paparazzi chased them across the Riviera, snapping photos of every kiss, every glance. One image of them kissing sold for £250,000. The rest of the world couldn't look away. But behind the scenes, it wasn't just romance. Mohammed Al-Fayed reportedly hired publicist Max Clifford to tip off photographers. It was a media circus, but also a strategic show. And then came the whispers. Was Diana about to get engaged? On August 30th, 1997, just one day before the crash, Dodi bought a diamond ring with the words, "Dis-moi oui," tell me yes. His father claimed he even proposed that night. But Diana's friends never confirmed it. While all this media buzz swirled around her, Diana kept working. Just weeks earlier, she had auctioned 79 of her dresses in New York. The money, millions of dollars, went to AIDS and cancer charities. She was still trying to do good in the world, still trying to use her fame for something real. She'd recently met Mother Teresa. She'd supported the ballet. And on August 9th, she had walked through Bosnia to raise awareness about landmines. This wasn't a woman fading into the background. She was trying to start a new chapter. But something darker was happening too. In private, Diana was exhausted. She was lonely. Her diary entries, later revealed after her death, spoke of betrayal, fear, and despair. She wrote about being emotionally battered by the royal system. She felt watched. She felt hunted. And she wasn't subtle about it. She once told her butler that someone was planning an accident in her car. She even named names. She suspected the brakes had already been tampered with. She mentioned MI5, MI6, even Charles. And she believed it was all because someone wanted her out of the way. August 30th, 1997. Diana and Dodi arrived in Paris from their yacht trip, planning just a brief overnight stay. It was supposed to be quiet, a stopover. But from the moment they landed, photographers swarmed them. They went to Dodi's apartment first, then to the Ritz Hotel. Around 9:30 p.m., they tried to escape the attention by going to dinner. But paparazzi ruined that too. They couldn't even sit down to eat. So they gave up and returned to the Ritz. They were trapped. Two people just looking for peace, surrounded by flashing cameras and shouting voices. Earlier that afternoon, while Diana went to a salon, Dodi went to buy that ring. CCTV footage caught him choosing it. £11,600. A bague de fiançailles, an engagement ring. But he never gave it to her. It was found later in his apartment, still in its box. His father said they were going to announce their engagement that Monday. The ring became fuel for conspiracy theories that still haven't died. Some believed this engagement was the final straw for the people in power. Some said it made Diana too dangerous to live. Back at the Ritz, the couple sat in their suite, boxed in by the press. Around midnight, they decided to leave through a back entrance using a decoy plan. The idea was simple. Send one car out the front to draw attention, then sneak out the back in a different car. Henri Paul, head of security at the Ritz, was driving. Diana's usual driver wasn't behind the wheel. Her bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, was in the front seat. Just before 12:30 a.m., they slipped out the back door. For a few seconds, it worked. They were finally alone. But only for a moment. Earlier that evening, Diana had called her sons, William and Harry. It was just a normal call, a check-in from Mum while the boys were at Balmoral with the Queen. They had no idea it would be the last time they'd hear her voice. Diana had planned to return to London the next day to be with them, but that day never came. A few hours after that call, she would be gone. It was just past midnight in Paris, August 31st, 1997. The streets were quiet, but something dangerous was about to unfold. Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed were trying to escape a pack of paparazzi. Their driver that night wasn't their usual one. Henri Paul, head of security at the Ritz Hotel, had been called back after his shift. He wasn't a trained chauffeur, but he got behind the wheel anyway. Paul had been drinking. A toxicology report later showed his blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit. He was also on prescription drugs that should never be mixed with alcohol. Yet, he laughed at the paparazzi before pulling out of the Ritz, acting as if nothing could touch him. The black Mercedes S280 pulled out from the back entrance of the hotel, hoping to lose the chasing photographers. As the car sped through Place de la Concorde, witnesses noticed something off. The Mercedes didn't wait for the red light. It shot forward, weaving through traffic, pushing far beyond the speed limit. They were doing double the allowed speed along the Seine. Some paparazzi followed on motorcycles but couldn't keep up. Inside the car were Diana, Dodi, Henri Paul, and bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones. The chase was fast, reckless, and deadly. Then came something strange. A white Fiat Uno suddenly appeared. It swerved near the Mercedes. Investigators later found white paint marks on the black car and black marks on a Fiat Uno tied to a photographer named James Anderson. That Fiat was never officially confirmed to be at the scene, but the damage raised questions. Just moments later, witnesses reported a bright flash inside the tunnel, possibly from a camera or something else. Many believed that flash might have blinded the driver just before impact. At 12:23 a.m., the Mercedes slammed into the 13th pillar of the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. The crash was violent. The sound was described as thunderous, like a bomb. Dodi and Henri Paul died instantly. Diana was still alive, though trapped and gravely injured. Trevor, the only survivor, had been severely hurt and would later say he couldn't remember anything. The left side of the Mercedes had taken the brunt of the hit. Diana was pinned between the seats, semi-conscious, gasping for air. Dr. Frederick Mailles was driving home from a party when he saw the wreckage. He had no idea who was in the car, but he rushed to help. He found Diana slumped on the floor, beautiful, silent, but alive. He gave her oxygen and tried to stabilize her. He didn't recognize her until much later. Other witnesses, including American tourists, were horrified by what they saw. Not just the wreck, but the photographers snapping photos instead of helping. One firefighter heard Diana's final words, "My God, what's happened?" before she slipped into cardiac arrest. There was chaos. Photographers were everywhere. One even claimed he only opened the door to check Diana's pulse. Another pushed police aside to take pictures. A photographer at the scene would later say, "They are killers." While Diana was still breathing, the clock was ticking. It took over 90 minutes to get her to the hospital. She was removed from the wreck at 1 a.m., but didn't arrive at Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital until just after 2 a.m. The ambulance had even stopped once when her heart stopped mid-route. When she arrived, her heart was still beating faintly. Then it stopped again. Doctors worked frantically. They injected adrenaline into her heart. They opened her chest. A tear in her left pulmonary vein was discovered, tiny, hidden, but fatal. It was the kind of injury almost impossible to detect and nearly impossible to treat. Even after hours of surgery, transfusions, and shock treatments, Diana's heart wouldn't start again. At 4 a.m., She was declared dead. By 6 a.m., the world knew. There was another tragic detail: seat belts. None of the passengers wore them. Investigators confirmed it. If Diana had been belted in, experts said she would have likely survived with only minor injuries, maybe a black eye or a few broken ribs. Rhys Jones, long believed to be saved by a seatbelt, actually wasn't wearing one either. The only reason he lived was dumb luck and the angle of the crash. The Mercedes belts were found to be functional. The damage to Diana's seatbelt likely happened during the collision. Forensic pathologists and emergency doctors agreed on one thing: time and safety could have saved her. If she had worn a seatbelt, if she had been moved faster, if her injury had been found in time, she might have lived. But everything that night, from a drunk driver, a mysterious car, the flash in the tunnel, to a delay in treatment, stacked against her. Princess Diana died not just because of a crash, but because of a series of decisions, mistakes, and missed chances. It was still dark on the morning of August 31st, 1997, when phones started ringing in palaces, embassies, and newsrooms across the world. The British ambassador to France made a call that no one ever wanted to make: to inform Queen Elizabeth that Princess Diana was dead. Word spread fast, and within hours, thousands gathered outside Buckingham Palace, silent and stunned. Strangers hugged each other. Mountains of flowers covered the gates. People cried openly in the streets, not just in London, but in cities across the world. In Paris, crowds lit candles and left notes near the tunnel. In San Francisco, over 14,000 people marched. Even war-torn places like Bosnia and Angola held memorials, because Diana had once walked through their minefields without armor, and now they wanted to honor her. Grief hit so hard, suicide rates actually spiked in the UK, especially among women who were close to her age. While the world mourned, something else began: a quiet storm of doubt. Too many things didn't sit right with people, and those doubts eventually forced the British government to open one of the biggest investigations in its history. It was called Operation Paget. The man in charge, Sir John Stevens, was asked by the royal coroner to dig into the rumors that Diana hadn't died in an accident but had been murdered. Some believed MI6 was involved. Others thought it was done on royal orders to silence her. And while that sounded dramatic, the investigation didn't brush anything off. It went deep. 14 senior officers worked for nearly 3 years. They gathered more than 11,000 pages of documents, 1,400 photographs, and countless hours of expert analysis. It cost over £12 million. Forensic experts even studied the food in Diana's stomach to shut down pregnancy rumors. By 2008, the final verdict came in: unlawful killing, caused by a drunk driver and reckless paparazzi. No foul play, they said. But not everyone was convinced. One thing that never stopped fueling the theories was the missing CCTV footage. You'd think, in a city like Paris, a car crash involving one of the world's most famous women would be captured on camera. But strangely, not a single video exists of the crash itself, not even of the car entering the tunnel. Conspiracy theorists latched onto this. They said there were 17 cameras on the route that night, and all of them somehow missed it. Too perfect, too suspicious. But when investigators traced it back, the truth was more boring than sinister. Most of those cameras weren't traffic cams. They were shop security systems pointed at doors and windows, not the street. But to many people, the absence of footage still felt like a cover-up. Because in a tragedy this big, no one wants to believe it happened by chance. And then, there was the letter. The one Diana wrote almost a year before she died. She gave it to her butler and told him to keep it safe. In it, she claimed someone was planning an accident, something that would cause brake failure and serious head injury. It was terrifyingly specific, and after her death, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a prophecy. The letter was written just after her infamous BBC interview, the one where she said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." That made headlines, and it made enemies. Diana said she felt watched, followed, unsafe. So when that letter became public in 2003, people didn't dismiss it as paranoia. They believed she knew something, and that she was trying to leave a message behind. As more secrets unraveled, attention turned to the royal family. People wanted to know what the Queen thought, what Prince Philip had said. 6 days after the crash, the Queen finally broke her silence in a letter, calling it a huge loss to the country, and praising her grandsons for being brave. But behind closed doors, there was tension. Some reports say Prince Philip was furious when the flag at Buckingham Palace was lowered. It was something never done for a non-royal. And Diana, technically, was no longer royal. But there was also warmth. When William and Harry didn't want to walk behind their mother's coffin, it was Philip who offered quietly, "If I walk, will you walk with me?" They agreed. Then came Mohammed Al-Fayed, father of Dodi, who died alongside Diana. He was certain it was a plot. He blamed the royals. He said they couldn't accept the idea of Diana marrying a Muslim. Al-Fayed pushed for the investigations. He gave interviews, he named names, and he kept public interest alive. Meanwhile, Di Davies, who once led royal protection, revealed something even stranger. He had warned officials weeks before the crash that Al-Fayed was not a good match, and was told the Queen already knew. No one followed up. 1 month later, Diana was dead. Decades have passed since that night, but the questions haven't gone away. Not completely, because it wasn't just a death. It was a moment that shook the world, opened wounds in the monarchy, and left millions with a feeling that something was never fully explained. Diana had always felt like more than a princess. She was raw, flawed, emotional, and human. Maybe that's why her death still doesn't feel like the end of a story. It feels like a chapter that someone tried to close too soon.